The apocalypse is coming, but I'm grilling pork belly on the terrace. The sizzling, oily aroma mingles with the laughter from the movie, filling the room. In my past life, when the apocalypse struck, that scumbag and his family stole the supermarket my parents left behind, then turned around and pushed me into a horde of zombies, making me watch as I was devoured alive. Xia Jian, you little wretch, hurry up and transfer this neighborhood supermarket to my son. If you don't agree, I'll have Jianhua go get the legally marry Li Miao Miao tomorrow, and then you'll be crying your heart out. Amid the noisy scolding in my ears, I suddenly opened my eyes, my chest heaving violently, and looked around at everything in disbelief. Familiar shelves lined the room, neatly stocked with snacks and daily necessities. Lu Xiulian stood by the cash register with her hands on her hips, spittle flying everywhere, while Zhang Jianhua beside her kept his head down, picking at the corner of his clothes, still looking as pathetic and hypocritical as ever. My heart clenched violently. I had been reborn. After struggling desperately for a month in the apocalypse, only to be devoured by zombies, I had somehow returned to the month before the apocalypse began. In my past life, it was these very words that forced me to hand over the small supermarket left by my parents to Zhang Jianhua. In the end, he and his mistress kept all the supplies for themselves. My own savings, thanks to Zhang Jianhua's constant deception, had dwindled to less than 5,000 yuan. The apocalypse arrived, and the prices of supplies skyrocketed. I couldn't buy even a single scrap. A month into the apocalypse, zombies broke out everywhere. I could no longer find any supplies. Unable to hold on any longer, I risked my life to rush to the Zhang family's place and beg them for help. But they deliberately threw rotting garbage onto themselves, attracting a horde of zombies. They watched coldly as I was torn apart and devoured by the undead. Every time I think of it, the pain seeps out from the cracks in my bones, making every hair on my body stand on end, a chill creeping up the back of my neck, and the places where I was bitten aching as if they were still bleeding. Are you deaf? Lu Xiulian, seeing that I did not respond, reached out to flip through the cash register's ledger. I suddenly slapped her hand away, the last trace of warmth in my eyes completely shattered, leaving only a bone-chilling coldness. Old hag, who do you think you are to touch my family's belongings? How dare you curse at me? Lu Xiulian, like a dog whose tail had been stepped on, lunged at me with claws bared. I dodged to the side, grabbed the nearby mop, and swung it at her legs. Get lost. Even if I smash or burn down my family's supermarket and house, it's none of your ungrateful lot's business. Jian, how could you become like this? Zhang Jianhua hypocritically came over to mediate. Shut up. I turned around and shoved the mop right into his mouth. Zhang Jianhua, I was truly blind in the past to waste 3 years on a spineless loser like you who lives off others. If you want to get married, then go ahead and do it, and stop being an eyesore here. I struck quickly and ruthlessly, the mother and son howling in pain as they were shoved and driven out of the supermarket amidst curses. Slamming the door shut with a bang, I grabbed sausages and bread from the shelves and stuffed them into my mouth. I didn't stop until a bloated pain spread through my stomach. It felt so good to be full. Sliding down against the door panel to sit on the floor, I finally couldn't hold back my tears. Not crying, but feeling relieved. In this life, I will never be at anyone's mercy again. Zhang Jianhua, Lu Xiulian, Li Miao Miao. Everyone who owes me will pay back with interest, one by one. Now, the first step is to clear out this small shop and turn it into the capital I need to survive. A moment later, I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes, and my gaze became unusually resolute. I quickly moved all the supplies on the shelves that could be useful in an apocalypse: compressed biscuits, canned food, drinking water, batteries, and lighters, into the warehouse behind the supermarket and locked them up. For the remaining items that were of no use, I took out paper and a pen and wrote, 50% off clearance sale. I posted it in the most visible spot, then shouted at the top of my lungs, clearance sale. 50% off. Everything half price. The neighbors were drawn by the shouting and soon packed the supermarket. I quickly collected the money and packed everything up, not finishing until evening when the supermarket was completely cleared out. In total, it came to $225,000. But this was far from enough. Without taking a moment to rest, I immediately opened my mobile banking app and various loan applications. I knew my credit limit well, and I also understood that after the apocalypse, these debts would become utterly meaningless. My fingers moved swiftly, maxing out credit cards and withdrawing all available online loan limits. After completing all the procedures, my phone balance showed $502,000. Still not enough. In the evening, I returned to the old house. Opening the door, the familiar old sofa came into view. Stepping closer, the yellowed family photo hung steadily on the wall. I lay down on the big bed in my parents' bedroom, trying to feel the lingering traces of their presence, as if they were still there. A tear trickled from the corner of my eye onto the faded pillow, my voice tinged with reluctance. "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad." The next morning, I went to the real estate agency. A middleman surnamed Jean clutched a folder, looking troubled. "Miss Xia, we've managed to find a buyer for your supermarket storefront within a week, but the old house is quite aged, making it hard to find a buyer. I can sell it at 30% below market price and offer you an extra 3% commission, on the condition that both properties must be sold within 3 days. I don't plan to keep either the convenience store or the old house." In the month I barely survived, every day brought thunder, typhoons, and torrential rain. The old house was situated in a low-lying area, and by the third day of the storm, the water inside had already risen to waist height. The convenience store, also a ground-floor shop front, couldn't withstand the heavy rain either. The real estate agent's hand trembled as he held the contract, quickly responding, "Sure thing, Miss Xia, rest assured about these 2 properties. I need to rent a top-floor apartment with a large terrace, preferably 2 adjacent floors rented together, and I need to move in 3 days. What floor range can you accept?" "Above the 30th floor." "The 30th floor. Are you sure?" "All right, let's get it done as soon as possible." With that, I left the agency. As soon as I stepped out, I heard the agent muttering under their breath, "This guy must be crazy. With such good conditions, he's still paying extra commission. You know, the 3% commission on these 2 properties is no less than $100,000. And he's selling the well-located low-rise unit to rent a high-rise penthouse that no one wants." I heard his disdainful words and let out a sneer. I took a taxi to a blacksmith's shop in the countryside and, when no one was around, discussed 3 different weapon designs with the owner. The owner frowned deeply. "Miss, what you're describing are all prohibited items." I didn't argue and simply raised the price. "Double the price, and I need the goods within a week." The boss was still a bit hesitant. "If by any chance we get caught, miss, it's still not going to work." I said firmly, "Triple the price." The boss looked like he was ready to take the risk. "All right, come pick it up in a week." I dare not stop for a moment. I am afraid. I am truly too afraid. Without a moment's rest, I went straight to the wholesale market and spent 200,000 yuan on 2 gasoline generators, 3 wind turbines, and 5 large-capacity freezers. The warehouse behind the supermarket was just big enough to hold these items, so I slipped all the purchased supplies inside when there were few people around. By the time I finished, the night was deep. I dragged my leaden legs to swipe open the door. The moment my fingertips touched the icy doorframe, my knees suddenly gave way, and I crashed uncontrollably onto the carpet. My vision went black, and my consciousness, like a light abruptly switched off, instantly plunged into darkness. I struggled to open my eyes, my wrist still throbbing with pain, but what made my scalp tingle even more was the golden square floating before me, space binding successful. Initial area, 10 square meters. Could this be one of those miraculous pocket dimensions from fantasy novels? The boundaries of the pocket dimension are transparent barriers, and the floor is made of a material I've never seen before. Although the pocket dimension was not large, it would be a good place to hole up in when danger arises. I studied the space carefully once more and, finding nothing unusual, stepped out of it. When I opened my eyes again, the surroundings gradually shifted from the pure white space to the hotel. Struggling to prop myself up, I collapsed onto the bed step by step. Early the next morning, I took a taxi to the warehouse. Now that I had the space, moving the supplies inside was the safest option. However, figuring out how to move things in was another problem. I entered the pocket dimension and asked the interface, "How can I move things inside?" Almost at the same time, the golden frame displayed, "Think of the item in your mind and silently say the word, store." I used a freezer to conduct an experiment in the space. I pictured the freezer and whispered, "Store." In an instant, the freezer disappeared, and I entered the space. The freezer was indeed intact inside the space. However, I noticed that entering the space this time felt a bit strange, but what exactly was it? I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I continued to send the 2 gasoline generators into the space as well. This space is only 10 square meters, and I estimate that I can fit a freezer and 2 generators inside. The rest will have to wait until the agent finds a suitable house before moving them over. I went inside the space to take a look. I had clearly estimated that the space could only hold this much, so why is there still extra room now? Check the specifications of the generator and the freezer again. Indeed, a large freezer takes up 4 square meters, while the 2 generators each take up 3 square meters. Now there's about 3 square meters of extra space. Could it be? The space area has increased. I am very excited inside. But what is the opportunity for the increase in area? Looking at the 3 large items brought in before me, and then at the expanded space. 3 items. 3 square meters. I pondered to myself, and a wild idea immediately flashed into my mind. System, does the space area increase by 1 square meter every time I put an item in? That's right, but you only have one last chance to increase the space area. I left the space and first went to the used car market, spending $12,000 to buy a van. Now that the space area can be expanded, of course, I should stock up as much as possible. I went to various bookstores and spent 20,000 yuan buying all the thumbtacks. Back in the car, I opened every box of thumbtacks, and they scattered across the back seat. I had no idea how many there were, but I tossed them all into the space at once. Inside the space, white mist surged instantly. The area, which could originally only hold 10 square meters of supplies, expanded wildly. The numbers on the golden interface soared, 10 SQM. 3,000 SQM. 100,000 SQM, finally settling steadily at 100,000 square meters. Excessive expansion detected. Remaining expandable area, 358,000 SQM. Initiate value conversion. Select the unit area value of stored items as the benchmark. I stared at the pile of thumbtacks in the space, and the system automatically marked the baseline. Original thumbtacks occupy 1 square meter, valued at 20,000 yuan. This one. Confirm the conversion. A sharp, ding notification sound rang out from my phone. Trembling, I opened the banking app, and the number in the balance column instantly made me hold my breath. 7,160,000,000 yuan. A full 7,160,000,000. I gripped my burning phone, staring at the massive fortune in my account, unable to suppress a smile that broke into laughter, yet also unable to hold back my sobs. This time, I won't just survive, I'll thrive and live a life of splendor. I left the space, got into my car, and drove to the real estate agency. My voice was calm. The house is no longer for sale. Not for sale. I just listed it yesterday, and today you're backing out. Are you messing with me? I already arranged for a buyer to view it tomorrow. If you breach the contract, what about my commission? Oh? A buyer? I glanced at the blank client registration form on his desk. From the time I listed it yesterday until now, you haven't even called me once. Did the buyer just fall from the sky? I contacted them online. They're coming tomorrow. He argued stubbornly, his neck stiff. If you go back on your word like this, who would dare to deal with you in the future? Is that so? I was about to speak when Li Shui, sitting at the desk next to me, let out a soft cough. She is an agent from the same company. She happened to be there yesterday when I listed the property, and at the time, she even reminded me, the commission can be negotiated further, no need to rush into a decision. I was in a hurry back then and didn't get a chance to say much to her. Mr. Zhang, don't be like this. Li Shui adjusted her glasses and said frankly, Miss Xia, actually Mr. Zhang didn't have a client appointment today at all. He just told me, this deal is a sure win, wait until she gets anxious, then push the price down. Mr. Zhang's face instantly turned the color of pig liver. He glared at Li Shui and said, why are you butting in? It's just the facts. Li Shui pulled out her work log. This is today's client registration. Indeed, no one has inquired about your house. Mr. Zhang was left speechless, clenching his fists tightly. Looking at Li Shui's candid demeanor, I made up my mind. The balance in my account was still burning a hole in my pocket. Rather than bother with someone like him, it was better to focus on the real business. Since there are no clients, I really won't sell the house after all. I turned to Li Shui, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. But I want to buy a house, 2 connected penthouses with a terrace, the bigger the better. No budget limit. Can you have the contract ready by 3 p.m. tomorrow? Li Shui's eyes lit up, and she nodded immediately, yes. I have 2 penthouses in the same complex, the owners are in a hurry to sell. I'll go organize the documents now. Sorry for the trouble. I gave her a smile, turned around, and picked up the photocopy of the property deed from the table. As I passed by Mr. Zhang, I paused for a moment. That's right. My voice wasn't loud, but it reached his ears clearly. Don't always call people stupid behind their backs, after all, who's really the fool is still up for debate. Mr. Zhang's lips trembled, unable to utter a single word. Walking out of the real estate agency, the sunlight felt warm on my skin. Yesterday, I was still worrying about supplies, and today, I'm holding billions in confidence to pick out a house. This pre-apocalyptic reversal is far more interesting than getting angry over petty people. Oh, I forgot there's one more thing. I drove to another agency. I need to buy a slightly low-lying first-floor house in the urban village. I do have one available right now, but miss, that house might not be suitable for living in when it rains. This is exactly what I wanted. The agent raised an eyebrow but ultimately didn't say much. After signing the contract, I called Zhang Jianhua. Soon, the disgusting voice of the jerk came through from the other end of the phone. Jian, you finally picked up. I'm begging you, okay? He deliberately dragged his voice with a crying tone, but impatience lurked in the tail end. My mom said, if you don't transfer the house to me, I have to go get the legally marry Meow Meow this afternoon. 3 years of feelings, and you're really going to watch me marry someone else? Before I could respond, Lu Xiulian's sharp wail exploded from the receiver. Xia Jian, you jinx. My son wasted 3 years on you, and you're still stingy with a crappy house. Bring the property deed over right now. The baby in Meow Meow's belly is the Zhang family's golden treasure, and that shabby house of yours will be just perfect for their wedding. The house is an old one in the old town, very dilapidated. I deliberately lowered my voice, with a sobbing tone. What's wrong with a dilapidated house? It's better than sleeping on the streets tonight. Lu Xiulian spat fiercely. Send the address quickly. Don't try any tricks. After hanging up the phone, I let out a cold laugh. Their rented house expires today, and they're scrambling to find a place to stay. Perfect timing, here's a big gift. The sun is scorching hot enough to fry an egg. I picked a hot pot restaurant, took my time eating, and only headed out with the fake property deed once the outdoor temperature had cooled down a bit. When I arrived at the address, Zhang Jianhua, Lu Xiulian, and Li Miao Miao had already been baking under the sun for nearly 2 hours. Lu Xiulian's floral shirt was soaked through and could be wrung out, Li Miao Miao's makeup had smudged into panda eyes, and she pointed at the peeling, dilapidated house in front of them, shrieking, Zhang Jianhua. Is this the house she gave us? How can anyone live in such a wreck? Lu Xiulian also exploded. When she saw me approaching, she pointed at her own nose and cursed. Fine, you bitch. Are you deliberately fobbing us off with this shabby house? I think you just don't want to give it to us. Zhang Jianhua also darkened his face. Xia Jian, what do you mean by this? Can this broken house even be lived in? I was just about to defend myself. 2 men in floral shirts suddenly appeared at the alley entrance, staring at the dilapidated house for a long time before shouting at me, Hey, sis, is this house for sale? Our boss has his eye on this land, 1 million in cash. Zhang Jianhua and the other 2 froze instantly. 1 million. Lu Xiulian's eyes widened like brass bells, all her previous disdain vanishing as she shoved me aside. This house is ours, and it's not for sale. What makes it yours? The man raised his voice. Zhang Jianhua grew anxious and suddenly shoved me, Get out of here. Stop causing trouble. This house is ours. Li Miao Miao also let out a sneer and linked her arm through his. Some people just occupy the toilet without using it, now it's too late for regrets. I spoke without confidence, This house, you have to give me 300,000. The property deed is still with me, if you don't, this million is mine. Lu Xiulian has always despised me like this, get out of the way, hand over the property deed now. Fine, I'm taking the property deed with me. Don't even think about getting this house. I made a move to leave. They immediately became anxious. Zhang Jianhua called out, Jian, wait a moment. Let me discuss this with them. After about 5 minutes. Li Miao Miao said with heartache, at most 150,000, I can't take out any more. I grievously reddened my eyes and said, for old time's sake, 150,000 it is. Li Miao Miao transferred 150,000 to me via WeChat scan. I looked at the money that had arrived, pinched the corner of my clothes, and turned around sobbing. 150,000 is a bit low, but the most important thing is that once the house is sold to them, they'll have no money left. The Zhang family had a resettlement house 7 or 8 years ago and got over 800,000 in compensation, I know that. But given the Zhang family's extravagant nature, after all these years, I've calculated they probably only have around 100,000 to 200,000 left. I just want to see what they'll stock up on when the apocalypse comes. Just as I stepped out of the alley, I heard the 3 people behind me excitedly arguing, saying this house was a treasure, worth $1 million. Selling it for $5 million or $10 million was no big deal. Lu Xiaolian's laughter was piercingly sharp. A mocking smile curled at the corner of my mouth. As I turned the corner, the 2 buyers were already waiting. Handing over 10 red bills, the men's eyes gleamed with greed. Sister, you're straightforward. Next time you need something, come to us again. All right. I waved my hand, turned around, and drove toward the furniture market. The scorching sunlight streamed through the car window, while photos of the new property glowed on my phone. The rundown house I bought for 100,000 yuan, I'll just gift it to them as their end-of-the-world sea view mansion. Stepping into the furniture market, the air-conditioned chill mingled with the scent of leather. I said to the sales assistant, I need 2 sets of large furniture. One set must be sturdy and durable, able to withstand rough use. The other set should be comfortable, with no budget limit. The salesperson's eyes lit up and led me to the solid wood section. For a sturdy option, choose this black walnut wardrobe. It features a full mortise and tenon structure, with reinforced stainless steel hinges. Longtime customers have used it for 5 years without any loosening. I knocked on the cabinet's surface, listening to the dull echo. Solid enough, this is the one. For a comfortable option, I need something smooth to the touch. That has to be this light luxury soft panel model. The salesperson opened the cabinet door. The edges are wrapped in top-layer cowhide, the hardware has silent damping, the opening and closing are completely quiet, and the feel is smooth. I touched the soft panel. Alright, I'll take 1 set of this too. In the bed frame section, the sales assistant patted the hardwood bed frame. This bed is sturdy, with reinforced pine legs and a solid wood plank frame. Even 4 or 5 adults jumping on it won't cause any issues. I pressed down on the bed board, and it didn't budge. Sturdy enough. For a comfortable model, it should be softer, allowing you to relax when lying down. This latex soft padded bed is the most suitable. The salesperson lifted the mattress, 20 centimeters thick imported latex, excellent elasticity. The cowhide soft padded headboard feels especially comfortable to lean on. Customers all say, once you lie down, you won't want to get up. I sat on it to try it out, soft but not saggy. Not bad, I'll take this one. In the sofa area, the salesperson pointed to a genuine leather corner sofa. For a durable option, choose this one, Italian cowhide leather, a hardwood base, and armrests with storage. It's scratch-resistant and wear-resistant. I sat down and gave it a shake. It was indeed sturdy. As long as it's durable, I'll take this one. For a comfortable option, I want something I can curl up and lie down on. This chaise lounge sofa is simply perfect. I then looked at a few more small pieces of furniture. It wasn't until evening that I finally made my selections. Seeing me buy so many pieces of furniture all at once, the salesperson couldn't help but remark, all this furniture you've bought is enough to purchase a large apartment in the city center. You have to spend what needs to be spent. I scanned the code and paid the full amount, making a point to emphasize. Deliver the sturdy set to the penthouse duplex tomorrow and install it on the spot. The comfortable set, after unpacking, place it in the corner of the living room without assembly. Double the shipping and installation fees, and everything must arrive before 5 p.m. tomorrow. As I walked out of the furniture store, the evening breeze carried a warm gust. Glancing at the balance on my phone, it had barely changed. The confidence of billions was enough to max out both safety and comfort. Durable items go inside the house, while comfortable ones go in the space. If the house falls, the space becomes the last safe haven. Li Shui sends a message on the phone. The railing on the rooftop terrace has been reinforced, rest assured. Tonight I sleep in the old house. Before the morning mist had fully dissipated, I was already clutching a list and standing at the entrance of the hardware store. 20 solar panels, 20 meters of reinforced nylon rope, must bear a load of 500 pounds. Also, 10 chainsaws and axes. 20 rolls of thick wire, 1,000 nails. The shopkeeper crouched behind the shelves, rummaging through the goods. What are you planning to do? I took the coil of rope and tested its hardness. I'm planning to start a small pig farm. I'm not sure if these materials are enough. That probably won't cut it. You'll need at least 3 times as much. There's a pig farm back in my hometown. I was pressed for time and worried the boss might notice something off, so I said, "Boss, I'm young and inexperienced. Could you help me figure out what I need? Also, do you know where I can buy bamboo?" You've come to the right person. There's a bamboo grove right behind my house. I need 150 pieces. The hardware store owner was startled by the quantity I needed, 150 pieces. 100 will do. Miss, do you know how much 150 bamboo poles amount to? I do. Just get them ready. Money is not an issue. The boss caught my intention and nodded. All right, I'll give them to you at the market price of 15 yuan each. Leave an address, and I'll have them delivered after cutting them this afternoon. I left the warehouse address. Having agreed, I turned and entered the next-door grocery store, where the shopkeeper was stacking candles into a small mountain. Wrap up all the smokeless candles. I pointed at the glass jar. 50 brass lighters, 100 boxes of waterproof matches, the most wind-resistant kind. Her hand paused as she counted the candles. A lot of people have been buying these days. Have you heard about the power outage too? I smiled without responding, then glanced over the shelves. 40 high-power flashlights, with 100 extra packs of batteries. 200 rolls each of plastic wrap and aluminum foil, the thicker the better. 100 portable gas stoves, and 1,000 gas canisters. The stainless steel thermoses on the shelf glinted in the sunlight as I called out the numbers, 30 of the 2-liter or larger ones, with insulation lasting at least 24 hours. At checkout, the shopping cart was piled so high it blocked my view. The owner and his wife helped load everything into the car with smiles, packing the trunk and back seats so tightly there wasn't a gap left. Going camping, miss? The grocery store owner dusted off her hands. I started the car. Pretty much. Better to be fully prepared and feel at ease. I turned the car into an alley. After making sure no one was around, I closed my eyes and murmured to myself. The carriage emptied in an instant. He patted the steering wheel. Next stop, the pharmacy, the hard currency more valuable than food in this apocalypse. I walked into the pharmacy, the scent of medicine mingling with the smell of disinfectant wafting out. I walked straight to the prescription drug section. 100 boxes each of cold medicine and fever reducers, and the largest packages of anti-inflammatory drugs like amoxicillin and cephalosporins, 50 boxes each. The pharmacist looked up at me, that much? I need to register it. For backup, there are many people at home. I added 100 boxes each of painkillers, stomach medicine, and allergy medication, 100 bottles each of vitamin C, B-complex, and calcium tablets. Moving to the over-the-counter medicine section, I pointed at the disinfectant supplies. Bottles each of alcohol spray and 84 disinfectant, 100 tubes of disinfectant gel, 100 rolls of gauze, 200 boxes of Band-Aids, 50 bottles of iodine. The pharmacist stared at the list and laughed, "You're stocking up more thoroughly than a small clinic." I paid and watched the cardboard boxes being loaded into the car, feeling mostly at ease. Getting sick in the apocalypse is a death sentence, and these medicines are the foundation of survival. Just like in the morning, I turned into the alley and stored all the medicine in my space. The afternoon vegetable market was bustling with noise, and I headed straight for the vegetable stall. 3 tons of cabbage, 500 kilograms of each type of dehydrated vegetable. I pointed at the bundles of vegetables. 500 kilograms each of potatoes and onions. The boss was stunned, his mouth wide open. "Do you run a restaurant?" Almost every time I go to a store, I hear this question. I curled my lips and continued lying without a hint of a blush or a racing heart. I'm buying them for a charity delivery to remote mountain villages. I walked over to the fruit stand. 500 kilograms each of apples and pears, cold-resistant varieties. Moving further in, there was a fresh meat stall, and I said bluntly, 1,000 kilograms each of pork, beef, and lamb, all cuts prepared, directly bagged, 5 kilograms per bag, plus an extra 500 for packaging fees. The meat stall owner saw a big order coming in and was overjoyed. "Sure thing." He went to the seafood shop and ordered all the fish, shrimp, and shellfish. When I passed by the agricultural supply store, I turned in 100 bags each of pig feed, sheep feed, and cattle feed, all in pellet form. The owner helped me load them into the car. "Buying all this to start farming?" I nodded. Now that I have enough space, raising some livestock feels reassuring. I've already placed an order for a batch of live chickens, pigs, and sheep at the farm for tomorrow. By the time I slowly made my way back, the vegetable and fruit shop, as well as the butcher shop, had everything ready and helped me load it all into the car. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Li Shui took me through the property transfer procedures. It was a duplex, not a large single-story flat. But it's fine, I don't have to go through the trouble of connecting the 2 apartments myself. The 2 floors together total 400 square meters. The terrace alone is over 100 square meters. It's good, I can grow vegetables, use some leaves to feed the animals, and use the animal manure as compost for the vegetables. The only thing I'm worried about now is personal safety. After signing the contract, I went straight to the security door section of the building materials store. "Boss, I need to install a security door, preferably one at the level of a bank vault, anti-pry, anti-cut, and able to withstand forced entry." The boss raised an eyebrow. "This level is enough to keep out thieves, but it's unnecessary for home use." "It's not to guard against thieves." I clenched my fingers, my voice tight. "It's to guard against my ex-boyfriend, a scumbag who keeps harassing me. He once smashed my door, and I'm afraid he'll do something reckless." His face immediately darkened, and he patted me on the shoulder. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'll install this door to the highest standard for you. I'll have the factory rush it tonight. The lock cylinder will be military grade, and the door frame will have 3 reinforced ribs. I guarantee even a bomb couldn't blow it open. I still need to install razor wire. So, I'll have a 3,000-volt high-voltage electric fence around the main gate, with a mobile phone alarm system, plus razor wire, 2.5 meters high and impenetrable. I'll install surveillance cameras too, with a backup battery for power outages. That scumbag won't even get close without getting zapped, won't even touch the doorstep. I'll pay half up front. I handed over the deposit. It must be installed within 2 days. Rest assured. We're on it, and we'll make sure to weld you an ironclad fortress. I was in the house that afternoon, watching the various tradesmen install the furniture. The next day was the same. It wasn't until the afternoon of the third day of installation that the razor wire was fully set up. I paid the remaining deposit to the boss. Now the task is food and daily necessities. I pushed the cart, sweeping through the shelves. Self-service hot pot, self-heating rice, 1,000 boxes, chips, chocolate, beef jerky, every flavor is thrown into the cart. The rest of the snacks are also packed to the brim. I picked out a few types of sanitary pads I usually use and bought several large boxes. Toilet paper was also purchased by the case. At the checkout, the cashier teased me. "Stocking up for the winter, are you?" "Pretty much." Same as before, after stowing all the goods into my space, I headed to the clothing store. At the store, I directly stated my sizes. 300 sets each of underwear, all cotton. 100 sets each of outerwear, durable style. 30 pieces each of windbreakers and down jackets, must be windproof and waterproof. 500 pairs of socks, half thin and half thick. The boss quickly packed the items. "Are these for the whole family?" Hum. The last stop was a gas station and an agricultural machinery store. 1,000 liters each of gasoline and diesel, stored in sealed barrels. I watched as the lids of the barrels were tightened. 2 diesel generators are needed, with sufficient spare parts and engine oil. I added another 200 boxes of charcoal and 10 tons of coal. The boss helped me secure the oil barrels on the roof of the car. "Miss, are you heading to a remote place?" I started the engine. "Yeah, it's a long way, so I need to stock up on fuel." After these few days of shopping, the space was packed full. I lay on the chaise lounge placed in the space, carefully listing the things I still needed to buy. I still lacked essential water and some miscellaneous items. I called the Purified Water Company and ordered 100 barrels of water. I also bought 50 large water storage tanks online, each capable of holding 10 tons of water. When the apocalypse comes, I'll just fill them up. I bought dozens of power strips, each tens of meters long, online. Salt boxes, various hot pot bases and seasonings. Also 500 bags of rice and flour. I don't know if the space is suitable for growing vegetables. If it is, I could stay in the space for the rest of my life. I asked the space, "What are the temperature and humidity inside the space?" Temperature, 25 degrees Celsius, humidity, 50%. This is quite suitable for planting. I ordered dozens more bags of seeds for radishes, tomatoes, cucumbers, greens, and other varieties. 100 bags of black soil, 100 bags of nutrient-rich soil, and some fertilizer. I lay down for a while longer, then began organizing the supplies. By the time I left the space again, it was already early morning. I went to the 4S car dealership and paid in full for 2 Mercedes-Benz G-Wagons. I don't know why. My heart told me I would definitely need them in the future. Afterward, I went to the flower market and bought lilies, various types of roses, and rambling roses. In the post-apocalyptic world with no internet, a phone is just a brick. Growing vegetables, tending flowers, and raising animals can be considered the joys of life. helping to avoid the loneliness of a solitary world. I also bought an electric scooter, because the space is large and it's inconvenient to carry things. Driving a big G-Class feels a bit too extravagant. With less than half a month until the apocalypse arrives, I am already well prepared. In the following days, I spent most of my time repairing the fence with bamboo and rarely left the space. Once the fence is fixed, all kinds of animals can move in. There are only 3 days left until the apocalypse. The last chicken coop has also been completed. I drove the van to the farm and brought back 30 chickens, 10 broilers and 20 layers. I parked the van at the warehouse, locked the door from the inside, made sure no one was around, and directly put the van into the space. I drove the van next to the chicken coop, and the big and small chickens all flew into the coop one after another. The same went for the remaining cattle, sheep, and pigs, transporting them batch by batch. Lying on the sofa in the room, I slowly relaxed. I looked at the surveillance footage on my phone showing the warm scene of Zhang Jianhua and his family of 3. I let out a sneer. I'd like to see if you can still be so happy and harmonious when the apocalypse comes. 10 seconds until the apocalypse. 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Boom. Boom. Dark clouds, like ink-soaked cotton, pressed down on the rooftops, as a torrential rain poured down, rattling the window panes. The phone kept vibrating on the coffee table, messages flying fast in the owner's group chat. Finally some cool weather. The past few days were so hot I almost got heatstroke. The air conditioner can finally take a break, and the electricity bill monster, back off, back off. Someone filmed the white curtain of rain outside the window, captioning it, listening to the rain and daydreaming, so soothing. My fingertips glide across the screen, yet a chill runs down my back. They don't know that this seemingly cooling downpour is just the prelude. A catastrophe for humanity is approaching. In the previous life, extreme heavy rainfall would trigger urban flooding, setting off a chain reaction of flash floods. The water storage tank in the kitchen had long been filled, waiting only for me to place it into the space. The rain outside the window grew heavier and more urgent, and the distant road surface was already glistening with water. Ding dong. Someone in the group shared a picture. The water in the small square downstairs is already above ankle level. Isn't the rain too heavy? Below it, a string of replies followed. Haha, this rain is really intense. I put down my phone and stared at the rising water outside the window. They thought it was just a refreshing, cooling rain, but they didn't see that the apocalyptic flood had already quietly risen within the rain curtain, slowly creeping toward every home. I left a jug of water outside and put the rest into the space. At noon, after eating, I lay down on the bed and fell into a deep sleep to the sound of the noisy rainstorm. When I woke up again, it was already midnight. I picked up my phone, and the screen showed 200 missed calls. I didn't even need to think about who it was, so I deliberately set my phone to silent before taking a nap at noon. I opened my phone, and sure enough, WeChat messages were even 99 plus. The chat windows of Zhang Jianhua and Lu Xiuyan were frantically jumping at the top. Zhang Jianhua, Xia Jian, where the hell are you? Reply immediately. The house is flooded. The bed is floating. Zhang Jianhua, my mom is terrified. Meow Meow's bag is soaked too. What do you mean by this? This crappy first floor is nothing but a puddle. Lu Xiuyan, Xia Jian, you bitch. Are you doing this to us on purpose? This broken house leaks like a sieve, the water's up to our waists. What's your game? Li Miao Miao, at Xia Jian, get over here and deal with this now. Otherwise, I'm calling the police. All our luggage is ruined, can you afford to pay for it? Zhang Jianhua, Jian, I'm begging you, did you already know it was going to rain heavily? You must have somewhere to go, right? Can you come get us? I admit I was wrong, okay? Lu Xiulian, those two buyers were your hired decoys. You tricked us into waiting to die in this broken building. You jinx. You'll die a miserable death. Zhang Jianhua, the water is still rising. It's already over the windowsill. The door is swollen shut from the water and won't open. Xia Jian, if you don't do something, we're really going to drown. Several photos followed the messages. In the dim room, slippers and cardboard boxes floated in the murky water. Lu Xiulian was screaming while clinging to the doorframe. Li Miao Miao crouched with her head in her hands on the only corner of the table not yet submerged, and in the background, the wall plaster could be seen peeling off from the soaking. I scrolled through the messages, my fingertips brushing over the words, drowned, on the screen, a cold smirk curling at the corner of my mouth. I opened the chat and slowly typed a line. Oh, you just noticed. How stupid. And wasn't it you who said this house has a great location and will appreciate in value? That day when you were fighting over the property deed, you didn't say that, did you? The moment the message was sent, the other person's messages kept popping up. Zhang Jianhua, stop your nonsense. Save us. Lu Xiulian, come save us quickly, or when I get out, I'll make sure you can't handle the consequences. Li Miao Miao, remember to bring us some food when you come. My son is hungry. Lu Xiulian, right, don't let my grandson go hungry. I suddenly felt a bit hungry and decided to eat some barbecue. Minutes later, I took a photo of the sizzling, fatty pork belly on the grill and sent it to the three of them. Caption, TSK TSK TSK, look at that golden brown meat, so fragrant. Too bad you guys can't have any. Almost at the same time, Zhang Jianhua's WeChat call came through. I hung up and turned off Do Not Disturb, looking out at the relentless rainstorm. I let out a soft laugh. This gift of the apocalypse, they had certainly accepted it thoroughly. On the surveillance footage, the murky floodwater had already risen to the three of them at waist level. Zhang Jianhua clung to a wobbling table leg, his face flushed red. If it weren't for you egging my mom on to snatch that rundown house. Saying it could be flipped for $1 million. Now look, the money's gone down the drain, and there's not even any food left. Li Miao Miao shoved him hard, splashing water all over his face, making her panda eyes look even worse. Zhang Jianhua, have some shame. Who was it that hugged me and called me Miao Miao the smartest, saying that Xia Jian, that fool, wouldn't dare do anything? Now it's all my fault. Lu Xiulian stumbled and steadied herself in the water, then grabbed Zhang Jianhua's arm and screeched. You worthless piece of trash. What kind of skill is it to curse at a woman? If you hadn't set your sights on this vixen and refused to marry Xia Jian, who was easy to control, would we be stuck here? Mom. Why are you blaming me too? Zhang Jianhua winced in pain. You were the one who said she could bear sons and told me to hurry up and legally marry her. Now it's my fault. I told you to get the marriage certificate, not to sink all your money into it. Lu Xiulian raised her hand and, from somewhere, pulled out a soft, soaked steamed bun and threw it over. Look at the fine wife you found. Now there's not even a bite to eat. What's in her bag besides cosmetics? Can you eat that? Li Miao Miao immediately exploded, lunging forward to tear at Lu Xiulian's hair. You old hag, who are you calling a homewrecker? If it weren't for your greed over that crappy house, would we have ended up like this? Your son is a useless coward, blaming women for his own incompetence. The three of them wrestled in waist-deep water, splashing water mixed with falling plaster from the walls, turning the scene into a chaotic mess. Zhang Jianhua was caught in the middle, protecting the phone at his waist while shouting, "Stop fighting. If you keep this up, the house will collapse." I picked up a piece of eggplant fritter with my chopsticks, watching the dog-eat-dog farce on the monitor, and laughed even harder. The rainstorm outside was still pounding against the glass, while the curses, splashing water, and sounds of scuffling from the surveillance feed mixed together, becoming the most appetizing background noise for my apocalyptic dinner. Keep arguing. I took another bite of the roasted mushrooms and said softly. Better yet, just argue until this shabby house collapses, so I don't have to look at it anymore. After finishing my meal, I entered the space and started the diesel generator. Several freezers cannot have their power supply interrupted. The chickens, ducks, cows, sheep, and pigs were also fed again. There were quite a lot of bamboo left at the time, so I simply raised ducks as well. The laying hens have already started laying eggs. With 20 hens, we get 16 eggs a day, which is quite productive. At the very least, it ensures we can have fresh eggs every day. The brightness inside the space is quite high, and wearing an eye mask doesn't make it suitable for sleeping there. At night, I usually sleep indoors. The next morning, I was woken up by the noise downstairs. I quickly washed up, while the rain outside was still pouring down like broken beads, plunging the entire area into darkness. I opened the surveillance footage. Zhang Jianhua, Li Miaomiao, and Lu Xiulian were trapped in a dilapidated house in the urban village, with floodwater already rising to their chests. Zhang Jianhua swung a broken basin, scooping water outwards. The clanging sound bounced off the moldy walls, and the splashing murky water mixed with his curses. Fuck. Can't scoop it all. There's no end to it. Li Miaomiao trembled, clutching her phone, the screen filled with red exclamation marks. She shouted, "Help!" out the window, but the alley only echoed with the sound of splashing water. Occasionally, a resident waded through, either muttering from a distance, "You brought this on yourself." The woman next door even yelled through the wall, "So noisy. Weren't you usually so tough?" I sneered contemptuously. It seemed that even in the urban village, they hadn't shaken off their nasty habit of being arrogant toward everyone. I faintly heard the sounds coming from downstairs. I held a large umbrella and stood by the balcony, looking down at the ground floor. The child on the third floor has a fever. Does anyone have fever-reducing medicine? I have candles at home. I'll send 2 to the 5th floor. Residents on the upper floors walked down through the stairwell, where the water was ankle-deep. Someone tied bread with ropes torn from bed sheets and lowered it down. Someone directed, "Send the elderly up first." I'm on the 12th floor, I can squeeze in 3. The lady on the 7th floor shared the last of her hot water with her neighbors, smiling as she said, "We're all in the same building. If we lend each other a hand, we'll get through this." On the surveillance footage, the water in the ruined house kept rising. Lu Xiulian pressed against the window, staring at the scattered lights in the distant neighborhood, and suddenly burst into tears. Why do they get help? And we're just supposed to sit here and wait to die. Li Miaomiao kicked over the plastic bucket floating in the water. If it weren't for you coveting that crappy house, we could be drinking hot porridge in the neighborhood right now. Zhang Jianhua swung the broken basin and smashed it against the wall, mud splashing all over his face. What are you yelling about? Yell again, and this house will collapse and bury us all. The alley remained desolate, with only their curses and the sound of scooping water echoing. But in the stairwell downstairs, all sorts of lively noises reached my ears. Someone was sharing batteries, someone was helping a neighbor charge their devices, and even the children were sensible enough to share their biscuits with the younger ones. What a heartwarming scene. Yet who could have foreseen that when the food runs out, the corridor once lit by candlelight would become a battlefield where people would fight with reddened eyes over half a bag of rice. Those hands that once passed warm water would, for the sake of a safe corner, reveal their most ferocious forms in the darkness. And now, those cursing in the floodwaters and those warming themselves by candlelight will, in the torrent of the apocalypse, be swept together into the same cruel trial. I locked the terrace door and stepped inside. Put on my headphones and watched a downloaded movie. By the fifth day of rain, it could no longer be described as merely noisy. The world outside the window seemed to be trapped inside a giant white noise machine, the sound of rushing water mixed with various noises, the muffled thud of a distant building collapsing, screams from someone's belongings being swept away, and faint cries in the distance. I checked the electrified iron fence again, and the screen showed a stable voltage, so I felt relieved and returned to the living room. The phone signal was intermittent, and the messages in the group chat had stopped 3 hours ago. Someone posted a video of the neighborhood flooded up to the second floor, followed by a flood of desperate messages like, "Need a boat," and "Anyone have extra water?" I swiped through the screen without saying a word, then turned around and pulled half a chilled watermelon out of the storage space. The cold, sweet juice drips down the corner of my mouth. The louder the rain outside the window, the more at ease I feel gnawing on it. Woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of arguing in the hallway. At first, it was a hushed quarrel, then it escalated into a furious, no-holds-barred shouting match. "Where's the bread you hid yesterday? My son is about to faint from hunger." These past few days, I've figured out the households in the entire building. That voice just now was from Mrs. Zhang on the third floor, sharp as nails scraping against glass. "Why should I give it to you? This is all my family has left." It was the well-dressed man with glasses from the fifth floor, his tone now filled with hostility. Then came the sharp sound of something breaking, followed by a muffled groan, and suddenly the world fell silent. I pressed my ear to the door and listened for a while, but heard no more sounds. Pulling back a corner of the curtain, by the faint emergency light outside, I vaguely saw a dark figure crouching at the corner of the hallway. I closed the curtain and made myself a cup of hot milk, knowing full well in my heart, this was only the beginning. On the surveillance footage, the scumbag's family was having a worse time than I had imagined. The low-lying house they were in had long been flooded up to the roof. The three of them huddled on top of the only wardrobe that hadn't floated away, shivering and soaked through. Li Miao Miao's belly was already showing. Her face pale, she dry-heaved while Lu Xiulian clutched a wooden plank, cursing incessantly. "That little bitch deserves to die a miserable death." I called Zhang Jianhua on WeChat. The call connected. I stood on the balcony, smiled at the screen, took a freshly fried steak from the space, deliberately held it up to the camera, shook it, took a bite, then let it drop into the water. "Xia Jian, I'm going to kill you." "Oh, really?" I hung up the phone. Watching them make ugly spectacles of themselves in their extreme rage. I turned off the surveillance and went to the space to add feed to my piglets. They were far more pleasant to look at than this family. On the morning of the 7th day, I habitually opened the surveillance feed, and my stomach suddenly dropped. On top of the wardrobe, Li Miao Miao had already lost all signs of life, her eyes wide open staring at the ceiling. The gruesome wound on her abdomen cut right across her swollen belly, taking with it the unborn child, leaving nothing but a bloody mess. Zhang Jianhua and Lu Xiulian, their backs to the camera, crouched on a floating wooden plank, tearing at something with sharp stones. Their mouths and hands were smeared with dark red slime, and scattered around the edges of the plank were bits of flesh and blood-stained bones. In her previous life, she had flaunted her pregnant belly in front of me, calling it the bargaining chip to keep a man's heart. Back then, the smugness on her face and her shallow expectations for the future were still vivid. But now, those two lives had become the food for the people closest to her. I stared at her wide-open eyes on the screen. There was no malice in them, only a dead, hollow blankness, as if even in death she couldn't understand whether she had died from a natural disaster or from the fangs of those around her. Hungry. Starving. This little bitch finally has some use. His mother muttered indistinctly, stuffing a piece of meat into her mouth. The sound of her chewing could faintly be heard through the surveillance feed. Zhang Jianhua said nothing, mechanically cutting the meat. His eyes were as empty as two stagnant pools, and only when the meat reached his lips did a beastly greed emerge. I haven't been able to eat a single bite of food all day today. On the 10th day, the rain stopped. I was jolted awake by the silence outside the window. The moment I slid open the balcony door, a strong stench of decay rushed in. The sky was a murky, earthy yellow. On the streets where the floodwaters had receded, thick layers of mud had accumulated, mixed with all kinds of trash and animal carcasses. A non-human roar came from afar, not a cry or a scream, but a blood-tinged growl like a broken bellows. I immediately closed the window and activated the highest level of defense mode. The vault door let out a click as it locked, and the electric fence on the bars began to crackle. I knew the zombie outbreak had begun. I looked down through the gap in the window. In the open space, a man in pajamas was staggering around. His legs were twisted at an unnatural angle, and a dark red slime hung from the corner of his mouth. When he spotted another woman trying to flee, he immediately lunged at her. Zombie. I muttered under my breath, my heart barely stirring. It had come half a month earlier than in my past life. The surveillance footage became the final show. Zhang Jianhua and Lu Xiulian had just crawled out of the flooded house, covered in mud, leaning against the wall to catch their breath, when they ran into three zombies staggering in from outside. Those monsters moved slowly, but their biting stance was ferocious. Run! Zhang Jianhua roared, his first instinct not to pull his mother along and run, but to shove her forward. The old woman screamed as she was tackled by the zombie, her murky eyes fixed on the scumbag, cursing, "Beast! Beast!" But the sound was quickly drowned out by the noise of chewing. On the surveillance footage, Zhang Jianhua had just crawled out of the zombie horde, covered in blood and gasping for breath. I told him through the monitor, "It's me. I'm at 502, Building 3, Yafu Garden. There's food at home." Half an hour later, a weak dragging sound came from the fire door in the stairwell. Zhang Jianhua, leaning against the wall, shuffled to the door, his eyes sunken and lips cracked. He had clearly been hungry for too long, and crawling over from the low-lying area had already drained his strength. I opened the fire door from the computer and let him in. I opened the door, the pre-warmed chainsaw in my hand gleaming with a cold light. Zhang Jianhua's weak voice came through. "Anan, I knew you wouldn't abandon me, right?" Before he could react, I stepped out, turned sideways, and swung down, cleanly sawing off his right leg. He screamed in agony as he fell to the ground, and I swung back to saw off his left arm. Amid the crisp crack of breaking bones, his eyes widened in terror, drained of any strength to struggle. I picked up his severed limb without hesitation and tossed it out the window. The smell of blood quickly drew a swarm of zombies. Zhang Jianhua suddenly roared like a madman, "Ah! Xia Jian! I want you dead!" I laughed and kicked his face. What's the rush? I'm sending you to hell right now. I grabbed Zhang Jianhua by the collar and dragged him to the railing of the stairwell. His legs and arms were broken, and he writhed on the ground like a maggot, letting out hoarse whimpers from his throat. Outside the window, the zombies were drawn by the severed limbs, snarling around the platform beneath the railing. Take a good look, this is what you owe me. I pressed down on the back of his neck, forcing him to look down at the monsters with their gaping, bloodthirsty jaws. His pupils suddenly contracted, and snot, tears, and blood streamed down his face. Before he could beg for mercy, I abruptly let go. He screamed as he tumbled over the railing, his wailing cut short mid-fall, followed by the dull thud of bones hitting the ground and the tearing sounds of zombies swarming in. The familiar sounds of chewing and bones crunching drifted up the stairwell, like a dull knife slowly slicing open the memories of my past life. It was the same roar, the same pain. I lay in a pool of blood, watching helplessly as zombies devoured me, while he stood not far away, coldly watching me take my last breath. I leaned against the cold wall, listening as the sounds downstairs gradually faded. In Zhang Jianhua's final screams, there was still a roar directed at the neighbors. She has food. Come and grab it. Soon, the sound of neighbors slamming against the fire door echoed through the hallway, each muffled thud striking the door, but it remained utterly still. They had tried before, but it was all in vain. What they didn't know was that I had long since replaced the fire door with the same material as the main door. I ran my hand over the handle of the chainsaw, the warmth in my palm dispelling the last trace of chill. The debts from my past life were finally settled in the most satisfying way. I turned around and locked the door, listening to the noise outside growing closer, a cold smirk curling at the corner of my mouth. The real show was just beginning. I returned inside, expressionlessly deleting all the surveillance footage, as if I were merely erasing a boring advertisement. Seeing the blood splattered all over me from when the chainsaw severed his arm, I frowned and decided to take a bath to wash away the bad luck. As I entered the space wrapped in a towel, I caught my little piglet grunting for food. I smiled and tossed a handful of feed. Don't worry, there's plenty to eat. The excitement in the neighborhood quickly escalated. More and more zombies appeared, starting with sporadic growls that soon turned into a chorus of roars. I stood by the window and observed with binoculars for 2 days, noticing that these early-stage zombies moved slowly. Some people, driven by hunger, ventured out to search for supplies and naturally ended up in direct conflict with the zombies. I discovered that the zombie's weakness is obvious: the head. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, I decided to give it a try. I pulled out the machete I had prepared long ago from the space, opened the door a crack. Seeing no one in the hallway of the apartment building, I locked the door. I went downstairs. I quickly locked onto a lone zombie downstairs. The monster had its back to me, head lowered as it gnawed on something, the skin on the back of its neck already beginning to fester. I took a deep breath, then lunged forward, my blade slicing swiftly and precisely toward the back of its skull. With a squelch, a foul, stinking liquid splattered all over me. The zombie wobbled for a moment, then collapsed stiffly to the ground. Just as I was about to turn and head back inside, I noticed a grain-sized, translucent crystal embedded in the wound on its forehead, faintly glowing in the dim, gray light. I had never seen such a thing in my past life. Hesitating for a moment, I used the tip of my knife to pick out the crystal core and pinched it between my fingers. It was cold, like a piece of cheap glass. As if possessed, I crushed it, and a warm current instantly surged from my fingertips through my entire body. The muscles in my arms suddenly filled with strength. The cleaver that had felt a bit heavy when I was hacking at the zombies now felt as light as a chopstick in my hand. Interesting. I raised an eyebrow, a spark of interest igniting in my eyes. Over the next few weeks, I became the nighttime janitor of the neighborhood, specifically targeting lone zombies to collect their cores. After consuming 3 transparent cores, I noticed my speed had increased, allowing me to easily dodge the sluggish lunges of the zombies. Swallowing a light blue crystal core, my hearing suddenly became acute, and I could hear the zombies' roars even from 2 buildings away. I sorted the crystal cores of different colors into glass jars and placed them on the shelves in my space, like collecting candies. The piglets in the space had grown to half size, and the cucumber vines in the garden bed were laden with fruit. As I fed the pigs and munched on compressed biscuits, listening to the zombies' roars outside, I suddenly felt that this apocalypse life was quite fulfilling. A month after the rain stopped, the outdoor temperature soared to 50 degrees Celsius. I wanted to see if there were any places that hadn't fallen yet, so I drove my Mercedes-Benz G-Class around the area. With the windows tightly shut and the air conditioning running full blast, my enhanced hearing allowed me to precisely avoid the gathered zombie hordes. The streets were in a mess, shop roller doors were pried open, shelves lay scattered everywhere, and occasionally, dried bloodstains could be seen. On a suburban road where water had not yet receded, I saw a couple. They were lying on a broken wooden board. The man was paddling desperately, while the woman curled up in his arms, her face as pale as paper. When he saw my car, the man's eyes lit up, and he waved frantically, "Miss. Please. My wife has a fever and is about to die. Just give me some medicine, and I'll be your servant for this life and the next." I rolled down the window, and a strong smell of sweat and medicine drifted in. The woman was breathing weakly, her forehead covered in cold sweat. The man had a deep gash on his arm, yet he was still shielding her tightly. I took out fever reducers, anti-inflammatory medicine, some compressed biscuits, and a few bottles of water from my space, and handed them through the car window. The man froze for a moment, his hands trembling as he took the items. "Thank you. Thank you. Don't follow me." I cut him off, rolled up the window, and stepped on the gas. In the rearview mirror, the man was clumsily feeding water to the woman, his movements cautious and careful. The corner of my mouth twitched, but I didn't look back. A few days later, I encountered a woman holding a child on another street. The child had a distinct bite mark on its leg, already scabbed over and blackened, but it hadn't turned into a zombie. The woman knelt on the ground, clutching my car wheel and crying, "My brother isn't a zombie, please save him. I'll do anything." I looked at the child, who stared back at me with big, dark eyes, not like a zombie, but more like a frightened fawn. "It seems antibodies have already appeared." I took out iodine, bandages, and a large bag of compressed biscuits from the space and threw them to her. "Find a safe place to hide. Don't trust anyone." The woman kowtowed frantically. I started the car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, she was carefully bandaging the child's wounds. Maybe the vaccine is really coming soon. I touched the warm crystal core in my pocket, stepped on the gas, and the Mercedes G-Class splashed water all the way as I drove toward the next quiet corner. The zombies hadn't been completely cleared yet when the extreme cold arrived. The temperature dropped to -80 degrees overnight. The zombies outside froze like statues, moving much slower, but life for the survivors became even harder. Fortunately, I had prepared well in advance. The space was piled with coal and down jackets like small mountains, and the fireplace in the safe house was burning, making it as warm as spring. I was just about to move the vegetables I had planted outside into the house when a sudden bang-bang sound came from the fence. It wasn't the erratic pounding of zombies, but a rhythmic, malicious assault. Someone was climbing up from downstairs. "Someone's inside. We saw your light by the window." Open the door. A harsh male voice mixed with grating noises. Someone was prying at my iron fence with a crowbar. I let out a cold laugh and took down the crossbow from the wall. This was custom-made at a suburban blacksmith's shop before the apocalypse, with long range and plenty of power. I had thought back then it might come in handy against zombies, but now it's just right for dealing with these clueless fools. I walked over to the monitor screen, where the image showed 3 men. The scar-faced leader brandished a rusty steel pipe, the skinny monkey pried at the fence with a crowbar, and the short, fat man held a cleaver while looking around, his eyes full of greed. Set the electric fence to maximum intensity. I said to the voice control panel, and the voltage value on the screen instantly surged. This fence had never been used since it was installed, so now was the perfect time to test it. Damn, this fence is tough. Skinny Monkey cursed as he put more force into it. The moment the tip of the crowbar touched the electrified railing, a crackling blue-white spark burst out. He recoiled like a scalded cat, convulsing as he tumbled into the bottom of the boat, smoke rising from his mouth. Ah way! Scarface was startled and reached out to pull him. The instant his fingers touched Skinny Monkey's clothes, another jolt of electricity shot through him. He screamed and yanked his hand back, his palm already charred black. The fat, short man was so frightened that the cleaver in his hand dropped, and he stammered, There's electricity. This woman has set up an electric fence. Knowing I'm a woman, it seems they've scouted the place beforehand. I slowly turned on the microphone, and my voice came through the hidden speakers outside the door. Want to come in? Sure, but first ask this fence if it agrees. The scar-faced man was both shocked and furious. He picked up the cleaver and slammed it against the fence. With a dull thud, the wrist-thick steel pipe bounced back, but he was left with numbness in the web of his thumb from the impact. Bitch! Don't be ungrateful. We know you have food in there. Be smart and open the door now, or when we smash this crappy fence, you'll be in for it. Oh? Then go ahead and try. Loading a tranquilizer dart into the crossbow, I aimed at the scar-faced man's thigh on the surveillance screen. Boss, maybe we should retreat. This thing is too creepy. The fat man looked at the twitching thin monkey, his voice trembling. Bullshit, retreat. The scar-faced man was still putting up a tough front, but suddenly caught sight of my figure pressed against the inside of the fence, his eyes lighting up. She's over there. Smash her. He picked up a rock and hurled it at the balcony door, but not only was there barbed wire blocking the way, I had also long since replaced the glass with bulletproof panes. I pulled the trigger aimed at his thigh, and the tranquilizer dart whizzed through the gap in the railing, hitting the target with precision. Scarface was stunned at first, then his leg gave way and he collapsed onto the boat, and within less than half a minute, he went limp and fell, tumbling down the floor. The short, fat man was scared out of his wits, scrambling down the rope with both hands and feet to the ground. Want to run? I opened the balcony door and stepped out, machete in hand. The electric fence outside the railing crackled, casting a cold glow across my face. Weren't you just acting all tough? The short, fat man was so terrified he jumped straight into waist-deep mud, struggling to crawl farther away. I couldn't be bothered to chase him, so I just pressed the remote switch for the fence. The fence slowly opened a crack, and a few wandering zombies nearby, drawn by the sound, staggered toward him. Help! The fat man's screams were quickly drowned out by the zombies' roars. I leaned against the fence, watching as the fat man gradually fell apart under the zombies' tearing, until there was no more movement inside. Only then did I close the fence and lock the balcony door again. Back in the warm living room, I poured myself a cup of hot tea. In the mud outside the window, a few zombies were still hunched over, gnawing. I picked up a freshly baked sweet potato, took a big bite, and the sweet fragrance instantly filled my mouth. Want to take my stuff? You'll have to live long enough to try. In this apocalypse, kindness is a luxury, but when it comes to dealing with fools, I have plenty of patience and means. One afternoon 3 months later. I was sitting by the fireplace roasting chestnuts when I suddenly heard the roar of a helicopter in the distance. I immediately walked to the window and aimed my binoculars at the sky. A helicopter with a faint rescue marking was circling at low altitude. Attention, survivors below. We are the official rescue team. A vigorous male voice came through the loudspeaker, carrying an unquestionable authority. Please bring essential supplies to the designated assembly point, and we will take you to the safety zone. Repeat, this is the last rescue opportunity. The surviving family on the opposite floor had clearly heard it. That family's surname was Wang. Mr. Wang's curtains were suddenly pulled open, and he leaned out, frantically waving his arms. His wife held their child, her face filled with the wild joy of surviving a disaster. This family had lost most of their supplies during the rainstorm, and in recent days, they had been surviving solely by scavenging food from neighbors and drinking rainwater, leaving them so thin they were nothing but skin and bones. As I watched them hurriedly gathering their belongings, a chill crept into my heart. I had seen the official rescue forces on TV, uniformed, orderly in their actions, never shouting with such a threatening tone. Don't go. It's fake. I shouted out the window, but the distance was too far and the wind was too loud, they couldn't hear me at all. Mr. Wang, already carrying his pack, was pulling his wife with one hand and shielding his child with the other, stumbling out of the building entrance and running toward the designated landing point for the helicopter. Within moments, 5 or 6 survivors had gathered in the open area, clutching their remaining supplies. The helicopter circled at low altitude, dropping a rope ladder, but didn't let anyone climb up. 3 men in camouflage and masks slid down the ladder, holding rifles, their eyes scanning the crowd fiercely. Hand over all the food and medicine. The leading man kicked the Wang family's package, his tone not one of rescue, but of robbery. Mr. Wang was stunned, still trying to explain, "Comrade, we're here waiting for rescue." Rescue? The man leading the group, holding a machine gun, sneered and suddenly raised his gun. Bang, 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 bullets whizzed past Mr. Wang's ear, hitting the tree trunk beside him. Less talk. Hand over your stuff, or die. The crowd panicked instantly. Some tried to run, but were forced back by 2 other men pointing their guns at them. Mr. Wang's wife was so frightened that she clutched her child and trembled. Gritting his teeth, he handed over the only half bag of biscuits and a bottle of cold medicine from his bundle. Is that all? The men weighed the bundle in their hands, then suddenly caught sight of the gold bracelet on Mrs. Wang's wrist, their eyes lighting up. Take that off. This was a gift from my husband when we got married. The woman shook her head, crying. The man stepped forward and yanked it off in one go. Amid the crisp sound of the bracelet hitting the ground, he roared and lunged at them, only to be kicked to the floor. You don't know what's good for you. The man spat, then suddenly raised his gun and aimed it at the other man's head. My heart stopped as I watched from the window, instinctively tightening my grip on the crossbow in my hand. But I knew deep down that I couldn't defeat them. Bang! A gunshot rang out, and Mr. Wang collapsed in a pool of blood. His wife let out a heart-wrenching scream, clutching the child as she tried to rush forward, but another man grabbed her by the hair and slammed her violently against the wall. The child cried out in terror, and the man, annoyed by the noise, struck the child on the head with the butt of his gun. I abruptly turned my face away, a wave of nausea rising in my stomach. Through the gaps between my fingers, I saw the three men, after taking all the supplies, waving toward the helicopter. The rope ladder was lowered again, and before climbing up, they fired a few more shots at the survivors lying on the ground to ensure no one was left alive. The helicopter roared away, leaving behind a scene of blood and bodies. A cold wind swept across the open ground, carrying the smell of blood through my window. I put down the binoculars, walked into the space, and looked at the carefree piglets eating their feed. Suddenly, my throat tightened. This is the apocalypse. Beyond the threat of zombies, there are also demons wearing human skin. They understand how to wield hope better than zombies, and they are also crueler than zombies. I touched the custom crossbow, carefully inspecting the bowstring. I didn't shoot earlier, not because I was heartless, but because I knew that once I exposed myself, I would only become the next target. But I remembered the helicopter's serial number, and I also remembered the stains on those camouflage uniforms. One day, these debts will be collected. The chestnut in the fireplace burst open with a pop, its aroma filling the air. I peeled one and popped it into my mouth, but couldn't taste any sweetness. The wind outside grew stronger, as if wailing for the lost hopes. Because of this massacre, there were almost no residents left in the neighborhood. My days passed fairly peacefully. Staying at home during the day. Killing zombies at night. I spend most of my time in the space. The pigs, cows, and sheep grow quickly. I even used a few newly harvested eggs along with flour to bake a cake. Occasionally, when I pull back the curtains, I can see heavy snowflakes drifting outside, with the occasional frozen zombie lying in the snow. Once, through my telescope, I saw two survivors fighting over half a bag of moldy bread. In the end, one was pushed into a horde of zombies, while the other ran off clutching the bread. I averted my gaze, poured myself a cup of hot cocoa, and watched the chicks in my space pecking at rice. It was so peaceful it didn't feel like the apocalypse. 5 years passed in this leisurely way, just like that. I've experienced quite a few extreme weather events over these 5 years. Storms, extreme cold, extreme heat, earthquakes, and so on. Fortunately, my little nest held up. Rumble, rumble. Many helicopters are circling in the sky again. They swoop low, scattering a vast white mist across the sky, like falling snow. Then, a fragmented broadcast crackles from the radio. The nationwide purification plan has been initiated. The zombie virus is under control. Survivors, please proceed to the nearest safe zone. I walked to the window, watching the distant ice and snow begin to melt as sunlight breaks through the clouds, spilling onto the dust-covered streets. Occasional survivors emerged from the ruins, supporting each other as they headed toward the safe zone mentioned in the broadcast. The piglets in the pen grunted and rubbed against my pant legs. I smiled, patted their heads, and turned to get the feed. The outside world was beginning to rebuild, but here I still had a barn full of livestock waiting to be fed. As for those who once hurt me, they had long since turned into a handful of dust by the roadside, not even worthy of being remembered. I leaned against the railing, took a deep breath, and the sunlight fell on me through the clouds, warm enough to make one want to cry. I didn't shout or scream. I just gently closed the balcony door, turned around, and went to the kitchen to cook a steaming bowl of noodles, with an egg and some greens added. It was the meal I most wanted to savor after my rebirth. In this life, I have conquered the apocalypse, overcome betrayal, and above all, reclaimed my own life. As for the future, I'll take it slow.